Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Maria Parham, editorial page editor for the Arizona Daily Star. Tonight on AZ Illustrated Metro, we'll meet a young, undocumented immigrant in the United States. He is unusual among his peers because he's not from a Latin American country. Then we'll check in on a plan to end veterans' homelessness in the city of Tucson. We'll also meet the new director of the Pima Association of Governments and the Regional Transportation Authority. Finally, we'll check in with a national investment strategist about the stock market. But first, a look at today's top stories.
The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency is recommending against the issuance of a water permit for the proposed Rosemont copper mine south of Tucson. The EPA's Regional Water Division Director says in a letter to the Army Corps of Engineers that Rosemont's mining activities, quote, would be insufficient to avoid significant degradation of the aquatic ecosystem, end quote. Rosemont has proposed an open-pit mine on the northeastern slope of the Santa Rita Mountains. The company says the mine's build-out and operation would create 2,900 jobs and inject $19 billion into the state's economy. Congressman Ron Barber issued a two-line statement about his political future this morning, saying at the end of it, quote, there will be plenty of time next year to talk about the campaign, but let me be clear, I will be running and am putting everything in place to win. For months, Barber has said he had to talk to his family before making a decision, but his campaign fundraising machine has been in full gear, with frequent email solicitations and visits from other members of Congress for private events. 3 Republicans are vying for their party's nomination in hopes of unseating Barber in the fall. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
Some lawmakers in Washington, D.C. continue to push for immigration reform and border security. At the same time, activists across the country are demanding a path to citizenship for young people brought to the U.S. as children. Many call themselves Dreamers, referring to the DREAM Act, a stalled proposal to legalize undocumented students. Most of the conversation surrounding this topic relates to undocumented people from Mexico. But the issue also affects immigrants from countries on the other side of the world. Mohammad Abdollahi, originally from Iran, works for the National Immigrant Youth Alliance. This social media hub advocates for legalization of young students. Fernanda Chavarri and Andrea Kelly spoke with him as he worked with undocumented immigrants from Mexico who staged a protest at the port of entry in Nogales.
My name is Mohammad Abdollahi, and I'm from Iran. I live in Michigan. I've been searching kind of for the last year to find another undocumented Iranian. I'm still looking, but I mean, I'm not unique at all in any sense. I lived in the U.S. since I was 3 years old. My parents came here on a student visa, and I've pretty much grown up here since then. My family came here to go to school, so like everyone else, searching for a better life. And after my dad graduated, he filed for a change of status. But unfortunately, we were never able to fix our status because the year before the filing fees had changed for the application he was filing for. And so it essentially got rejected because it was off by like $20, the fee. And so because of that, I essentially became undocumented. I haven't been able to fix my legal status. And really the only way I can fix my status is if there's some kind of legislation like the DREAM Act or immigration reform or something that passes so that I could legalize my status and, do things the right way. I haven't yet applied for deferred action. It's just more of a, I got to save up $465 and I have other priorities right now. And so the organization that I work with, National Immigrant Youth Alliance, a lot of us believe, we haven't done anything wrong in the first place. And so there's no reason why we should be placed into deportation proceedings if we were stopped by Border Patrol or whatever the case is. There's a lot of undocumented folks from lots of different countries. I know for a fact that like 1 in 4 Koreans are undocumented. So there's a lot of Korean organizations in California and Chicago, New York that specifically work with undocumented Koreans. There's a lot of South Asians, lots of undocumented folks from all walks of life, really. I think what's unique to my situation is that there's a lot of folks that are sort of from like the Middle East or those countries or even Africa that are undocumented, but it's really like a shameful thing to come out. Even to this day, like my parents are not supportive of me being out and being public and organizing because they just see it as sort of like a shameful thing that you shouldn't really talk about until you can fix your status. So I think that may be unique about my situation, which is that I'm very public about my status because I know there's other undocumented kids like myself who are from the same kind of culture, and they need to have some role model or someone to follow in order for them to also come out. I just think it opens the door for folks to understand that it's not just a Mexican problem, it's not just a Latino problem.
Tucson Mayor Jonathan Rothschild took on a challenge from the federal government to end veterans' homelessness in the city by 2015. He's enlisted a number of local organizations to help, and he joins me in the studio now to give us an update on the progress. Mayor Rothschild, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
You agreed a few months ago to be one of 25 cities in the country to take on this issue. Can you give us some history how we got here and just what taking it on means?
Well, the way we got here was the President of the United States, along with the Housing Department and the Veterans Department, chose Tucson as one of the 25 cities in the United States to end veterans homelessness by December 31st, 2015. And I believe the way we were chosen in talking to people in Washington is they really saw Tucson as a community that had some of the infrastructure in place to get this done, had some history to get this done, and they thought this is a place where we could be successful. So in a sense, we should be very proud of the fact that we were recognized just in that way.
Well, tell us about some of the agencies that you brought together to make this happen.
Yeah, when we got the word that we were going to be one of these communities, what I did was I said, I need to contact all of the agencies, all of the groups who can help with this effort. And I will tell you, Maria, it's been one of the most gratifying models and something we should emulate whenever we want to do something. We had immediately 18 agencies contact us, and I'm going to name some of them, and I will forget others.
But give us an idea.
But Primavera, American Red Cross, Compass Health, Old Pueblo Community Services, most importantly, the VA itself, the Veterans Administration, and then the City of Tucson Community Housing Development Department.
So tell us how you go about finding the homeless veterans. You've talked about these various agencies, and I'm sure they're all feeding you names, but just describe it a little bit.
So the first thing we did is went to our city housing department, and we said, look, we want to prioritize and shorten the time it gets to get a veteran into a home. So because you're talking about homeless folks and you may make contact with them, but if you don't do something for them within 10 days, you could lose them. And so we've been working with the VA, meeting on a weekly basis, getting names they have, getting names from these other agencies in the community. And literally we have in these agencies people going out into the desert. We have people walking the downtown streets. We have contact with our police and fire department and trying to identify these folks and then getting them into services as quickly as possible.
So there's a voucher program, and that comes through the federal government. How does that work for the veterans?
Well, so it's called a VASH, and it's Veterans Administration Supplemental Housing. The City of Tucson had some VASHs before. We probably had about 75 that we hadn't used. So again, we had a little bit of reserve. And in this program, we were awarded an additional 75. So we have those VASHs available to get people into the home. So what happens is we identify a vet. We at the city know who will accept these VASHs, and we try to match the folks up into an apartment as soon as we can.
Now, how long do these last, these vouchers?
Once you have the vouchers, you have them. So, but I can tell you there's far more than 150 folks that we're going to need to house. And so we are going to have to hope for and rely on reauthorizations each year. There's other ways to do it, but this is just a shortcut way to get people into the home. So if we continue to be successful, we should be able to get our reauthorization of additional vouchers.
I assume there's a broader strategy in dealing with homeless vets than finding a home. Certainly that's a key place to start, but what other things are you doing to make sure that they're successful?
There's several programs for doing this. This is a Housing First program, but unless you have the wraparound services for the vet, you probably won't be successful. So working with the VA in particular, Compass Health, some of the different mental health agencies, some of the substance abuse agencies, we're really talking about two populations here. We're talking about the Vietnam veteran era, where we have people that are in their 60s, going into their 70s, and have maybe been homeless for years, but are now at an age where they become very vulnerable on the streets. And so they're now ready to come home, ready to come in. Then we have our Iraqi and our Afghanistani vets who come back with a different set of issues, some a lot more difficult to find in the sense of whether it's been a post-traumatic stress syndrome, post-concussion syndromes. And those are the two populations that we're really trying to deal with. And quite frankly, what we want to do with this new generation of war veterans is treat them differently than we treated that past generation.
Give us some numbers now. How many people have you helped, and what kind of number do you see out there to reach that goal in 2015?
Yeah, so our goal was to house 208 people in the first 100 days. We housed 223, and that's just not the vet, but their families. Our goal over the next 100 days is another 225. We believe we need to house 1,650 over the 3-year period to accomplish our goal, because homelessness, people come in and out of homes. Some people who have never been out of their home before will be homeless. And we think if we can set up that infrastructure, we can not only end veterans' homelessness, but set the platform for ending women's and children's homelessness.
And in the time left, can you talk to us really about how the community can get involved in this? I know that's an important aspect of it, and people will hear this and say, I want to be able to help.
Yeah, well, the three things we need, and it's interesting, we can find an apartment, but if it's vacant and it has nothing in it, that's not a good recipe for keeping a person in a home. For $300, we can house somebody with all their supplies. If you go to 51 vets, that home, that's the place to go. We need mentors. We need people to help people move in.
Mayor, thanks so much for being here today.
All right, thank you.
Iran's supreme leader expressed support within limits for negotiations over his country's nuclear program, just as a new round of talks kicks off in Geneva.
The last in our series of personal stories from health reform, a Denver woman whose insurance policy was canceled.
I was planning to keep this plan for the future. This was not a substandard plan. It was a plan that was good for me.
And Miles O'Brien sits down with Chris Hadfield, the astronaut whose out-of-this-world dispatches shed light on life in space.
I could take a picture and within minutes tweet it to 1 million people. It just finally allowed me to really share the experience with as many people who wanted to come on board.
Those are just some of the stories we're covering on tonight's PBS NewsHour.
Wild pigeon and venison. Thanksgiving dinners have changed over the centuries, so have orchestras.
I'm talking about instruments such as the lute and a long-necked lute called the arch lute, and the viola da gamba and something called the cornetto.
Miles Hoffman's musical ingredients for Thanksgiving on the next morning edition from NPR News.
The Regional Transportation Authority and the Pima Association of Governments are individual agencies, but they employ largely the same staff, including sharing an executive director. The former director left the job about a year ago. The new permanent director is Farhad Moghimi. He started in the position in October. He has worked on transportation and other infrastructure jobs in the towns of Marana and Sahuarita. Andrea Kelly interviewed him about the new direction of the agencies.
Can you describe the role of the Pima Association of Governments? Sure. PAG and RTA are actually two separate organizations. PAG is the planning organization for the entire region. That includes all the cities and towns and the county and the tribal councils, the tribal governments. Essentially, the role of the agency is to coordinate all the planning efforts, land use, transportation-related issues, and any other potential regional issues that might come up that we can coordinate collectively and be able to resolve.
And then the RTA?
The role of the RTA was established back in 2004 for a very specific purpose. RTA essentially has the responsibility to deliver a set of projects that were approved by the voters in 2006 with a set of funding that was also approved for the purpose of delivering those projects. The RTA board is the same board as the regional council, but obviously with separate responsibilities to deliver those projects.
How does your previous work experience set you up to be the leader of this regional organization?
Well, I've been in the region for over 20 years, and combination of private sector experience as well as public sector experience. Back in roughly early 2000, I was working for Town of Marana, and that's when the discussions about the Regional Transportation Authority started. I was very active with the PAG at the time, and through my involvement with the PAG organization, I got more and more involved in working on the plan for the RTA, as well as the financing document that came back to the public for a vote in 2006. By 2006, I was in the private sector, and I was able to help and advocate for the passage of the RTA vote in 2006 as well. So being involved with early on in the process, I was very engaged, involved with the community, and truly understood the perspective from all the stakeholders in the community. It wasn't just a technical background, but really the community's interest and desires and what the RTA would have to look like and how we can meet our promise and deliver those projects. So I had both perspectives, and that was really key in being able to understand what I need to do in this current position to be able to continue that commitment and meet the promise that we made to the public.
How will you lead both organizations? What do you have planned?
I truly believe in working together as a larger community. So leading an organization like the RTA and PAG really requires my understanding of what is going on throughout the region with other member agencies that I work with. So my goal has always been, and will continue to be, to make sure that we understand the priorities of the region and make sure that we work collaboratively with everybody else involved in the region to solve those challenges. So it's not going to be just focusing on what's important to PAG as an organization. It's what's important to the entire region and all the members. So understanding their priorities, understanding what our challenges are, and working together to be able to solve those problems really kind of opens up the opportunity for communication and dialogue on a regular basis. So we're constantly going back and checking with our members and understand what we need to focus on any given point of time. I don't want to be in a position that we don't have that regular communication with our members, and their priorities obviously change constantly as well. And we want to make sure that we're communicating on a regular basis and focusing on the priorities and adjusting to those changes in priorities as well.
What's the long-term outlook for the Regional Transportation Authority? Is there enough money to complete all of the projects voters approved?
Yeah, the RTA program, as you know, it was a 20-year program, and the funding that came with the RTA goes through 2026. As part of our ongoing effort to make sure that we meet the commitments to the RTA, we constantly check on our expenditures as well as our revenue projections. We have recently asked the University of Arizona College of Management, Eller College of Management, to give us an outlook for what the revenues are going to be looking like moving forward from 2013 through 2026. As you know, due to the recession, it wouldn't be any surprise to anybody that because of the recession, the revenues that are projected are going to be lower than what we had anticipated back in 2005. I don't think anybody back in 2005 could have predicted the impact of the recession. So as a result, we're going to have to go back and look at the actual revenue projections and how much we collected to date versus how much we actually spent on projects, and moving forward, start projecting on our expenditures that potentially would recognize some savings as well. So one of the benefits of the recession, unfortunately, was that the bids were much more competitive. So we saw bids on construction projects that were about 20% lower than what we had anticipated. So there was some savings, but at the same time, the revenue wasn't coming in as high as we had predicted initially. Moving forward, we're going to have to work together as a community and look at the projects and identify a way to make up any potential differences in the revenue and the expenditure projections.
The Pima Association of Governments is partly responsible for distributing federal funding to the organizations, the governments in the region. What are the challenges with that right now?
Yeah, so same thing applies to federal funds and any state funds that come through the region for projects within the PAG region. For the same reasons that RTA is going to see some potential revenues declining over time, the federal funding sources are seeing declines over time as well. So that's going to be one of the challenges moving forward with regional transportation funding. At the time, it was a solution to not getting enough funding from the federal government or even the state government to meet our needs locally. So RTA was the solution to that. And now we find ourselves in the same position that the federal funds are declining as well as the state funds. So obviously, I want to be optimistic, and I think we can continue to work together with the state and federal partners to continue to fund projects for the region in the future. But the reality of it is there's just not enough funds at the federal level to address the needs of every region and every member agency. The transportation reauthorization bill that was passed recently by Congress expires in September of 2014. And that was only a 2-year extension of the transportation bill. So between now and September 2014, obviously the Congress would have to reauthorize and develop a new expenditure for the extension of the transportation bill and reauthorization and include some projects. So we hope that we can be at the table and have that conversation and make sure that some of the regional projects that are of a higher importance and priority both for the nation as well as the state make it into the list of projects that potentially could get funding. And so again, the question from a transportation funding bill at a federal level is not so much how much money is there, it's how important your projects are and are they going to get priority and get funded. And that's the conversation we're going to have with our congressional delegates and with our leaders at the state level to make sure that we can prioritize some of those projects and get funding for them.
The stock market hits record levels regularly these days, yet the economy remains sluggish and unemployment is high. How should investors view the market, avoid its volatility, and grow their nest eggs? For some answers, reporter Zach Ziegler spoke with Catherine Nixon, Chief Investment Officer for Northern Trust Corporation, on her recent visit to Tucson.
The stock market is continuing to nudge at an all-time high. Does that cause any worry of a possible bubble burst in the near future?
Well, when we think about bubbles, we think about valuation. And bubbles, although they're always crystal clear in the rearview mirror, they typically evolve around excessive valuation levels. And although the market is up 25% this year, and as you say, nudging always towards all-time highs, the valuation levels are actually quite normal, quite average, looking at history, with the S&P trading at just around 16 times forward earnings estimates. So it doesn't look like there's a bubble going on in the equity market.
And sitting in juxtaposition to those all-time highs, we have a bit of a sluggish economy, high unemployment. Do you see that as being at all kind of contradictory to what is going on in the stock market?
Well, it's actually interesting because it is a bit counterintuitive that we have this very fragile, slow growth economy, but what that's enabling is a very low interest rate environment. So low rates, some of the quantitative easing in the monetary policy that we're seeing from the Federal Reserve has encouraged investors to take risk, has increased risk appetite, and has really given a nice tailwind to equities.
And that's obviously something that's pretty easy for a lot of people to catch on with as far as investing. Do you have a lot of investors who come to you with that as a worry?
Well, sure. I mean, I think everybody worries about what the end game is here. How do we get out of this mess? And our point of view really is that at a certain point, the Federal Reserve is going to pass the baton, almost like a relay race, pass the baton on to the real economy, so that when we do see a reduction in some of the stimulus, perhaps a tapering of quantitative easing, and then eventually, although we think it's going to be years from now, eventually an increase in interest rates, the real economy will be on a sustainable growth path, and then we'll get earnings doing the heavy lifting on the equity side.
And as you talk about that kind of course that is coming, where we'll eventually see a backing off of the government, and is there any worry that there will be a bit of a correction when that happens?
Well, we got a little taste of that this summer, didn't we? Where there was talk of a taper. Bernanke sort of put the canary in the coal mine earlier in the summer, and we did see a lot of volatility, not just in equities, but the volatility was most extreme in the fixed income markets as investors readjusted their expectations around interest rates. So we have been, again, sort of counterintuitively, in a generally low volatility environment. So we do think that when we start to see some real shifts in policy, we will see heightened volatility.
All right. And looking at the area of treasuries, they've always been kind of that safe haven, but now, since they are traditionally lower earning, is there a bit of a worry with them since, well, they might not be as safe as some people think?
Well, when I think about safety, I think about a bond being money good. And of course, we continue to believe that the Treasury is money good. Despite all of the drama this fall around the debt ceiling debate and the government shutdown, we always believed that Treasuries would be money good. So although the rates are very, very low, Treasuries still remain the risk-free asset out there and the highest quality bond that we can buy for our clients.
And what advice do you give to someone who maybe is coming in as a little more of modest means and looking to start building kind of that nest egg?
Right. I mean, the most important thing for investors at any echelon of wealth, whether it's modest means up to the highest net worth investor, is take a good look at your goals. Really identify and quantify what your goals are, and then align your investment strategies appropriately around those goals. That'll give you very good guidance in terms of really how much risk you can take.
And what about, say, maybe those who are starting to creep a little more towards retirement? It's as that gets to be a bit of a worry for them. What advice would you give to someone?
That is a critical issue right now, to be honest with you. I think retirees are suffering right now under very low interest rate environments. And also the fact that, I mean, the good news is we're all living longer. So retirement now is a 30-year proposition. So you really need to make sure that your investments are appropriately aligned to take you through 20 to 30 years of retirement.
Northern Trust, tell me, how much of your investment is coming from individuals and how much of it is coming from larger group investment?
Well, I work for the wealth management area of Northern Trust, which is predominantly the individual investor, the taxable investor. We also manage money, though, within wealth management for some small foundations and endowment portfolios. So we do have a growing institutional business as well, but it's still predominantly the taxable investor families.
Thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
That's our show. To keep up with the latest news and watch the segments from this and other editions of AZ Illustrated, go to our website, azpm.org. I'm Maria Parham. Thanks for watching.